copyright laws work, but my goal is to one day have an intro video that's like the DX music video with like clips of us talking. That's the goal.
I would love that. Let's do
We
some
have
illegal stuff.
But hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Break It Down, a D-Generation X retrospective. I am your host, Nick Perkins, joined as always by your favorite writer and mine, Cameron Hawkins at Seahawk on Twitter. Cam, how's it going, man?
I'm doing all right, man. You know how it goes working these 6, 7, 8 jobs. It eventually catches up, man. Yeah, I decided to really have a weekend. Worst idea of my recent life. But we're here. We're kicking. We're still standing. We're still strong. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's half the battle, man. Well, I am glad to hear from you. We are this week. We're kind of taking a bit of a detour from D-Generation X in 1998. I wanted to skip ahead to a story that happened 21 years ago in 2002. It's one of my favorite pro wrestling stories of all time. It's the return of Shawn Michaels to professional wrestling, the return to the NWO, to DX, his match with Triple H. There's a lot we're going to cover, but before we do that, we would be remiss if we did not at least briefly mention this last weekend in the world of professional wrestling. Cam, you wrote an incredible article about AEW champion Maxwell Jacob Friedman. MJF All In happened this weekend at Wembley Stadium, the biggest wrestling show of all time. CM Punk is doing what CM Punk will do. There was a lot going on, man. What'd you think? What'd you think of this weekend? Did you have fun?
It was a lot, man. I love the look and feel first and foremost. When you run your biggest show, outdoor stadium, it's you don't want to compare everything to WWE because things should stand on their own. But we've only seen a venue look like that and be presented like that by WWE. So salute to AEW, man. It came together. I love the look. I love the feel. The crowd was into it. Really, really great matches. I really liked it. I thought that Joe and Punk, that's one of the best pay-per-view openers I've ever seen. I thought it was amazing. It was really, really good. I did some predictions about the show, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be impressive if Cole and MJF just stayed baby. Yeah. Just stayed baby and had a match and went through it, and that's what they did. And salute to Max, man. That was what I wrote. That's been in the works probably for a couple of years when him and I kind of first started getting cool. It was always fun to bounce ideas, and he is very much who he is. Who he is on screen is who he is, but he's also he's very thoughtful. He's very appreciative, and he has a great mind for the business and his own business. And so I hope that, and I'll have to talk to AEW, but I would love to put out the audio of just our conversation, because I really think people will get a better feel for exactly who he is and what he tries to represent. When we write, there are certain constraints that we have as far as what can be put out and what can't, what fits the story we're trying to tell. Because we really talked for a good almost 40 minutes, really got down to brass tacks on some things that did not necessarily make the article. Just one thing really quick. I'm fine. It's okay if I share this because there was no issue, but there's a part where we're talking about who he thinks his peers are, who's going to be next to him the next couple of years. And all you got in the article is him saying, can't nobody mess with me. Everybody's far away from me. But no, he was very complimentary of Rick. He was very complimentary of the Pillars. He was very complimentary of Garcia. And so I got to share what he said to Rick and Garcia. And, it's going to be a few years from now. I think we're going to see all those guys in really, really great positions. And we're going to talk, we talked about it a little bit, just like Rock was on before Triple H, but they still ended up very much becoming contemporaries. I think that's what you're going to see with Max. Yeah. He's going to be the guy, but those guys are going to be right there next to him. But yeah, man. And so he beat the Seahawk curse. there's a little Seahawk curse. If you talk to me before the pay-per-view, you're probably going to lose your match. But not only did he do that, he won the ROH tag belts with Cole and then retained. So salute to him, man. It's good to see a guy that works so hard do well. Now, Nick, you man CM Punk.
Let's talk about it.
Listen, I've said it, and I'm not the guy to talk to about fighting at work. I'm also not the guy to talk to about pulling a gun on somebody. That's that I've ever pulled a gun on somebody. I've been in some situations. You know what I mean? And I didn't call the police, but that's neither here nor there, right? So, I understand the pushback on a lot of things AEW that happen behind the scenes. I'm like, look, people fight at work, man. People fight at work. We all got a coworker we don't like. Most of us don't fight them, but it's not some type of super indictment on those human beings. I don't think they should not have jobs, anything like that. Sometimes y'all just don't get along. They happen to exist in a position where you can get a little physical and it not be the police called on you. So, but it's absolutely fair to ask Tony Khan or Triple H or anybody why on your biggest show with the most people ever, you have one women's match.
Sure.
Especially when you have talents like Willow, talents like Stat, and especially Athena, who, when we do the tallies at the end of the year, Athena might be Wrestler of the Year, man or woman. She really might be. And so it's fair to ask why. And if you keep having to ask why, you might have your answer. And that's unfortunate because you have some great female talent. There's no reason that a match or two can't be cut a little short to add them in. And not because they're charity cases, but because they're damn good. And it's giving you something different that you, like right now, if Athena's, I got her as one of the best on the planet, while you have your Rheas and Biancas and Charlottes and Eos and Oscars, you got Athena over there, man. You can showcase something that nobody else is doing on American television right now, and you should take advantage of that. So
yeah, I completely agree. Ember Moon was one of my favorite wrestlers in NXT, and she's as good as she was a few years ago. She's that much better now. I do think eventually people are going to realize, and by people I mean the people in charge, they're going to realize what they have in her, and they're going to strap a rocket to her back. She is absolutely incredible, as are many of the women and many of the men in AEW. I'm a big CM Punk fan. He is one of my favorite wrestlers of all times. I think his personal and professional story is one of the good ones in pro wrestling. But I understand if people are frustrated that they just have this huge show, the biggest of all time, and other people, all they're talking about is the CM Punk stuff. I would be frustrated if I was a wrestler, if I was Sting, and I went out there and had one of the best matches in decades with three other incredibly talented people, and nobody was talking about it because they're too busy talking about CM Punk. I'd be a little annoyed.
That's a really fair point. In that, this should be, and not that it wasn't, because I think that when he came to the press, he really expressed it, but this should be the best weekend of MJF's life.
Right.
And he should not have to answer questions about something that he was not involved in. He shouldn't have to have that shadow cast over. And again, it's not placing blame. It's just, you wish it was something you didn't have to deal with. I absolutely agree with you for sure.
Well, what we are dealing with today, like we alluded to earlier, Wembley Stadium was probably the biggest wrestling show this summer, the biggest party of the summer. But 21 years ago, SummerSlam 2002 was the biggest party of the summer. It was, I would say, one of the most important wrestling shows of that decade. That was, of course, the show in which Brock Lesnar was crowned the WWE Undisputed Champion by beating The Rock. It's when the fans turned on The Rock, embraced Brock Lesnar, embraced the new generation, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But my favorite part of SummerSlam 2002 was the return of Shawn Michaels after a 4-year absence. Cam, we've spoken about the history of DX over these last 6 episodes. We've talked about Shawn Michaels ad nauseum and his career before he retired in 1998 after the back injury. We thought in 1998 for a long time that was the last Shawn Michaels match we were ever going to see. When he retired in 1998 and came back as the commissioner and a commentator and made sporadic appearances, did you think back then that he was completely done wrestling, or did you?
I thought it was a wrap, man. I thought it was a wrap. Like when you, because again, this is when we're still young, so like retirements feel like they mean something. You know what I mean? Like there's not the potential to return. Yeah, I absolutely thought there was a wrap. I thought that he would come back every now and again, like as a sign of goodwill. But no, I did not think he would come back. Bad back to me. Once you got a bad back, you don't get fixed. They got a storyline right now about Seth Rollins having a nagging injury with a bad back. But yeah, no, I thought that was a wrap, man. I thought he would show up to do stuff, but I did not think we would see him back in the ring.
Yeah, and it wasn't just kind of physically the end of Shawn Michaels for a while. I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, he's said it himself, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, the dude needed a break. He needed to take some time to figure out what he wanted. He needed to literally find his smile. And it took him a while. It took him a good 4 years from WrestleMania 14 and leading up to 2002 that he and we'll talk about it. I've got his autobiography and we'll read a section. He was not in a good place for a long time. He was drinking a lot. He was addicted to different kinds of drugs. He was pushing away friends and family. One of the highlights was he did meet a woman who would one day become his wife and the mother of his children. You know her as Whisper from the Nitro Girls. Her real name is Rebecca. So he did marry her and they fell in love and they're still together today, which is great. And I think she kind of served as a big catalyst for him getting his life together. Would you agree with that?
I think so. It seemed to really center him. He was party guy before he was the Heartbreak Kid, right? Like him, and you saw the Dark Side of the Ring with him and Marty, and they were tearing it up every chance they got. Shawn becomes a solo act, a solo star. Shawn was admittedly like protective over his spot, admittedly paranoid, admittedly like rude to his coworkers, and it's not like, whereas CM Punk can rub people the wrong way, CM Punk has a track record and a history that speaks for itself. This is still Shawn Michaels on like kind of an upward swing. Like he has his boss's ear. He's definitely very talented. But like if Shawn Michaels doesn't return in 2002, we don't talk about Shawn Michaels being one of the greatest American wrestlers of all time. We talk about him being good. Right. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I definitely think that having the right person in his life, definitely centered him. And it's interesting, and I know we're going to talk about it, but, you got Triple H right next to you, who does not partake in any of these things that are making your life hard. As far as like drugs, alcohol, he has no part in any of that. You know what I mean? So it can be difficult having a friend who you're very close to, who is telling you about the things you should not do, because when it's your friend, you're more willing to butt heads, you're more willing to be aggressive. But when it's a woman, and not just a woman, but when it's a significant other, when it's someone that you care for who's telling you, it affects you differently. And so, yeah, I think, that it really did help him. He needed time away, but he also needed people around him who would help that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and he did have that in Triple H. It's great that you brought that up, because he almost ended his friendship with Triple H after years. He was just not in a good place. Back in 2001, when Vince McMahon bought WCW, they were going to bring Shawn Michaels in for that episode of Raw to make an appearance, but Shawn was not in a good place. We're gonna read a little bit from his autobiography, Heartbreaking Triumph, available everywhere. And he kind of goes into it a little bit. So he says, I loved Cameron, that was his son, and I loved Rebecca, but I still didn't stop taking those pain pills. My excuse now was, well, he's just an infant. I'll quit before he's old enough to notice. I didn't, though. That's something that addicts do a lot. I am a recovering alcoholic, a recovering addict. We're really good at justifying things and putting off things until next time. And that's what Shawn Michaels was doing. He said Cameron's first birthday came and went, and he was still downing the pills. Soon after Cameron's first birthday, the office called and asked me to come to Raw in Cleveland. This was the night Vince and Shane McMahon were taking over WCW, and Shane was down in Panama City, Florida at the very last Nitro. I don't know if they had a particular plan for me or if they just wanted to discuss if I could play a part in the great changes that were happening with the takeover, but I went to Cleveland thinking I might be on television that night. When they decided they weren't going to use me, I went to watch the show in Vince's office, and while I was watching, I took some pills. I went to the SmackDown taping in Detroit the next day, and Jerry Briscoe came up to me and said that Vince wanted to see me. Shawn, did you take something last night? That's my Vince impression. I denied it for a while, but eventually admitted that I did. He was real straight with me. We're sending you home. We wanted to give you a chance, but we can't have that. Hunter said you were out of it. Hunter said I was out of it? Yeah, it was obvious. I wasn't that bad. Also a thing addicts say. No, you weren't bad, but it was obvious that you were under the influence of something. I'm just telling you as your friend because you've got to stop that stuff. I went into one of my self-righteous tirades and told them that they don't need to tell me what I need to do. So I said, fine, I'm leaving. On the way out, I saw Hunter, and I really laid into him. You no good backstabbing SOB after everything I've done for you. I went out for a few minutes and then stormed out of the arena. I didn't talk to Hunter for another year and nearly ruined a friendship with one of the most decent and caring individuals I've ever had the privilege to call my friend. Hunter had stuck with me through thick and thin. When he first came to WWE, he knew he'd get a lot of heat by hanging out with me, Scott, Kidd, and I, but he didn't care. He ate all the heat from the curtain call, yet he never wavered in his support for me. He took me to my room many nights and woke me up many mornings when I couldn't take care of myself. He was a great friend, and I treated him horribly. Now, as an addict myself, as a recovering alcoholic, I can say Shawn's story is not a unique one. This is what we do. We don't think we're worthy of love a lot of times, and so we push that away, and we kind of look for ways to self-destruct and to prove to other people and to ourselves, no, I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of friendship, of strength. I'm not worthy of these friends and people that I have in my life. That's what Shawn was doing, and it wasn't good for a while, man. What do you do if you're Triple H? How do you handle that situation?
I mean, one thing about Triple H, he goes about his business, right? He goes about his business. Like we've talked about in the previous weeks, you know, there's legit frustration on Triple H's part. Shawn Michaels talks about, you know, what he did for Triple H, but in the same breath, with his own admittance, how many times Triple H did right by him? How many times he made sure he made those dates, he made those shows. And, you know, Triple H, well documented, you know, his time was put on the back burner for choosing to participate in things with his friends, you know. But Triple H stayed the course, man, stayed the course. Worked on himself, stayed focused, got his shot, and ran with it. So shout out to him for being a good friend, man. Like look, probably the most interesting thing about Triple H is that you look at the people closest to him. The people closest to him, a lot of them struggled with addiction. Right. You know, there's Shawn Michaels, there's the late great Scott Hall, there's the late great Chyna, there's Sean Waltman. You know, a lot of his friends, and it varies. I'm not going to say that he's been a saint to every single person he's ever come across, but a lot of his friends who struggled, he did stick by them, and later in life put them in positions to where they could still eat off of the things they were really good at. And so salute to him for that, man. Like that takes a lot. There's a lot of selflessness And there's a lot of trust that has to go into that. There's a lot of faith you have to have in people. And yeah, he's put some people in great positions to not just fall by the wayside. So salute to him for that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of Triple H, in 2002, he was a good guy. He hadn't been a good guy since 1999. Between 99, 2000, 2001, he was probably one of, if not the top heels in WWE. He really came into his own. He won the WWF title for the first time and really kind of separated himself from the pack and realized his potential. But he suffered a quad injury in a tag team match with Stone Cold Steve Austin, taking on Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit, and he was out for a solid 9 months. But he came back in January of 2002 to maybe one of the loudest non-Stone Cold Steve Austin or Road Warrior pops that we've ever heard. It's one of my favorite videos to watch every year. It's a comeback story, and I'm a sucker for a comeback story, as we will learn later. And with that, he came back as a good guy, and he ended up winning the Royal Rumble that year, went on to WrestleMania 18 to take on Chris Jericho for the Undisputed title, and he won. He was the second man to ever win the Undisputed title, and he was riding a wave of the good graces of fans in 2002. Shawn was not doing as great, but in 2002, something happened, man. And I don't want to get too far down the religion rabbit hole here. I don't know what you believe. I believe in a God, and I believe in redemption. I believe Jesus knew what the fuck he was talking about, most things. But I don't want to get too deep into that. But Shawn Michaels, he found God. He became a born-again Christian. He gave his life to Jesus Christ, and he says that completely turned his life around. He said that he quit the drugs, the drinking cold turkey, which is hard to do. When you're an addict, especially as much as Shawn Michaels said he was, quitting cold turkey, like, that is a miracle. Whether you believe in God or not, that's a really awesome thing. So Shawn Michaels gave his life to God and kind of turned his life around. And eventually, Vince McMahon called and wanted to bring him back. And a lot of people were skeptical at first. So if you were backstage in WWE and you heard that this guy, who previously had been a monster for years, you heard that he suddenly became a born-again Christian and now was a different man, would you believe it, or would you be a little bit skeptical?
In 2023, I'd be very skeptical.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is life experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I have a Jesus tattoo right here on my arm that I wear every day because tattoos don't go away. And so I do have absolutely similar views to you, Nick. But I've also seen people take advantage of the idea of religion. Jim Cornette, for whatever you think about Jim Cornette, and I think we've talked about that too. But he said something along the lines of, I heard he was born again. I wasn't super excited about him being born the first time, or something like that, right? Yeah. But I've had a really long conversation with Sting about early in the 90s, him really letting go of drugs, alcohol, steroids, and really censoring himself as a man of God. And I've seen him do great things for people. And so I always try to look for the positive in that. What do you believe? What do you produce? What has this done for you? And it very much seemed like Shawn Michaels was centered. You know what I mean? Like, now, again, Shawn Michaels ain't never fucked me over except that one time in high school when he stole a football, right? Yeah. So I can imagine, like, okay, so Bomani Jones tells this really great story. I mean, I don't want to butcher it, but basically, he had a friend he knew who owed him money, like from years ago, right? So he comes across the guy and they're talking, and he's like, "Yeah, Bo, I know I owed you money for that win, but my life is different now. I gave my life to God." And Bo was like, "So is God gonna give me my money?" You know what I'm saying? Like, what that got to do with me? But you definitely, every single thing you heard about Shawn Michaels from that day forward wasn't perfect, but you heard way less about how he was acting during his first run. way less about how he treated people poorly. You know, I think what would have been really interesting is if he doesn't take the 4-year break, but still finds what he found. Because what's the biggest question mark? What changes between him and Rock? That to me is like the biggest question.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, Shawn Michaels, like by everyone's admission, he was trying to derail the guy who would become the biggest star the company's ever produced as far as transitioning out of wrestling. And, you know, that's paranoia. That's jealousy. And so it would have been interesting, but it was kind of a situation where Shawn Michaels won the world title once after he came back. That's it. Right. You know, so he wasn't fighting for a spot. His spot was solidified. So I do wonder if he comes back to the same ecosystem with new ideals, what changes? You know?
That's a really good hypothetical. That's something to think about, maybe write about one day. But the fact is, he did come back, and by all accounts, like you said, he was a legitimately changed man. Like you said, we've heard mostly good stories about Shawn Michaels. There's still a few out there, and none of that excuses the type of person that he was pre-2002. But from most accounts, he really was a changed man. And not only that, not only did he get his mental, emotional, spiritual life in order, his back also miraculously healed as well. And I don't know if that's due to God or due to really good doctors or both, but it was a really cool thing because it led to Shawn Michaels returning to WWE as a professional wrestler, an active wrestler. So do you think his back injury was as bad as we originally thought? Do you think he just needed an excuse to take some time away? What do you think?
I think he was burnt out, man. I would never, like, if you say you're injured, you're injured. Sure. So I'm not taking that away from him, right? But I think the summation of everything going on, you know, Steve Austin becoming the man, The Rock being on the come up. Like, I don't know if Shawn Michaels could play third or fourth from the top. Like, everything was so focused in on him, on everything that he was doing. He was the primary point. What does Shawn Michaels do in 1998 without the title? You know?
Right.
Like, does he circle the wagons with Undertaker and Kane? Do you run him and Stone Cold through the summer? No, I don't think so. I think Stone Cold is his own thing. And so, yeah, I think a lot of things happened at once. I don't feel great. Maybe there's not a spot for me in the way that I want. You know, I look across the hall. My buddies are having fun with the NWO, but I can't just jump ship over there because Vince has been so good to me. I can come back if I want. You know, I think it was a summation of a lot of things. So, yeah, never want to say a guy's not hurt if he says he's hurt. So I'll ride with that.
Sure.
But yeah, I just think, hey, man, it was time to step away for a while, and it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I can't imagine his comeback going any better than it did. And this is what's fascinating. And people don't talk about this enough. And it's one of the most fascinating parts about this story was the way in which he returned. So the office called. They said they had an idea for him. He didn't know yet if he was going to wrestle, but they did know that he was feeling better. He had his heart back into it. And so they gave him a task. And that task was to join the NWO. So flashback a little bit to February of 2002. All right, WCW had been out of business for about a year. Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, they were taking a break. They were getting paid regardless. They were sitting out. They were making their money while sitting on the couch drinking a glass of wine, right? Eventually, in 2002, Vince McMahon brought back Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, the original 3 members of the NWO at the No Way Out pay-per-view. And this was supposed to be the biggest story of the year. But something funny happened on the way to the forum because people did not want to boo Hollywood Hulk Hogan. They had their hero back. They had Hulkamania back in the WWF where he belonged, and they just could not boo the man, even when he was going up against
he tried to kill The Rock.
Yeah.
He tried to kill him.
And boy, oh boy. So Rock and Hogan had a match at WrestleMania 18 that is still one of the most famous or infamous matches in WrestleMania history. The crowd of Toronto completely turned on The Rock. got behind Hogan like it was 1989 all over again. It was one of the most surreal matches I've ever seen, but it proved that Hogan, they didn't want him in the black and white, Cam. They wanted him in the red and yellow, which made an issue of the NWO. And I want to talk about that for just a brief moment. Tell me about your reaction when the NWO came back to WWE.
So, I'm a huge Scott Hall fan, number one.
Absolutely.
It was great seeing him back. It was like, who was it? It was Jericho, Angle, Rock, and Austin, right?
Right.
Okay, so like if your money was on the line, if you had FanDuel or DraftKings back then, like you're betting the mortgage on Rock or Austin. You just are, right? So the NWO comes back, helps Jericho secure the title. Jericho, and again, this is like never been kissed Jericho, right? False finish against Triple H on Monday Night Raw to win the title, Jericho.
Yeah.
It was exciting, man. And a big part of it was OG NWO. It was before the thing got bloated. You want to know what they were going to do, who they stood for. Vince went full supervillain, crazy in the mirror, saying he's going to destroy it all. I enjoyed it, man. I was really excited to see them back, to see them like tear things up. And again, as a small insulated unit, especially for sure.
Yeah, it was super exciting. It was one of the coolest things about 2002 was seeing those patented NWO shirts on WWF television. I remember I bought a couple of them. I bought the black and white and the red and black ones. I was NWO for life. But Hulk Hogan was not. He was kicked out of the NWO, right? He went back to the red and yellow. He kind of had his own trajectory. He ended up winning the WWF title again off of Triple H, actually. And that's a whole nother story that if we ever do an NWO retrospective podcast, maybe we can cover that. But that left Kevin Nash and Scott Hall looking for another member, which they found in X-Pac. X-Pac, obviously, he was in the NWO back in the 90s. He was in the Clique before NWO and DX. So he was a buddy. He was a friend. He was a talented guy that could come in and actually wrestle the matches for the NWO. And he was a good fit. But in May of 2002, unfortunately, Scott Hall's inner demons got the best of him. And he couldn't defeat them. And it's hard, like we said with Shawn Michaels, when you're an addict, like especially when you're in the world of professional wrestling and it's constantly go, go, go. The adrenaline of the live crowd, the come down when you get back to your hotel. It's hard, man. It's hard to kick those habits. Scott Hall could not at the time. So he lost his job. So now the NWO is Kevin Nash and X-Pac, which is not what you think of when you think NWO. Eventually they added the Big Show, who did have a history with the group, but you're trading Big Show for Hogan or Hall. Not a great change. They brought in Booker T, who had no history with the NWO other than like feuding with them. It was just
Shawn kick his face off.
Yeah. And
listen, I like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is great. There's nobody more annoying than NWO reverse leather Kangol Shawn Michaels with the bob haircut. The fucking worst. He's the worst.
That leads me to the point. They were looking for a shot in the arm. They needed something to try to salvage the NWO. So Kevin Nash came out during an episode of Raw, and he announced the newest member of the New World Order, which was, as you alluded to, Shawn Michaels. And this, for a 90s Shawn Michaels wrestling fan who loved DX when it was going on, seeing Shawn Michaels in an NWO shirt was a huge deal. So you said that you didn't like it, but what was your reaction?
No. Like when I say I didn't like it, like he was just a little prick. Like
yeah, it was.
That's what it was. I didn't dislike it. Like I didn't want him in the NWO. He was such a dick. He kicked Booker T's head off. What did Booker do to you? But yeah, it's just again that little bob haircut, that reverse leather Kangol. Because like even as a kid, you understood that the NWO and DX were the same thing but different. Like they were the Clique. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the squad. So yeah, I just he's rubbing it wrong. What did Booker do? I thought the book, like, you talk about smile through everything, man. Like, listen, he's a good employee and a good soldier. Because, man, a lot of people in Booker T's position would have pushed back on a lot of things, would have been a lot more angry. But he stayed the course. I had a great conversation with him about everything he's accomplished, how important it is to him to still teach. And so I'm glad that he's there. But, boy, if he had took Shawn Michaels in the back and wore his ass out, I wouldn't have been shocked.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
And, like, listen, Book, again, you my man. After everything everybody did to you for your career, the person you take it out on is Batista. Like, come on. That's a shot you chose. But yeah. But no, Shawn was like, again, he definitely fit in there. To me, at that point, Show was more Show than the Giant. Like, I had people over yesterday and they saw him and they recognized him, and they were like, yeah, I know him from wherever. And I'm like, no, you were Big Show decades longer than you were the Giant. And so I did not feel like that affiliation was proper anymore because he was a different character at that point. So yeah,
that's a really good point. So needless to say, the NWO was not what Vince McMahon wanted. Eventually, this is kind of an only in pro wrestling can this happen and it be funny. So Kevin Nash was out injured. He had injured, I think, his arm. The night he comes back from that injury, he's announced to be in like a 12-man tag. He's teaming up with the rest of the NWO, a few other guys. He tags in. It's the first time Kevin Nash has been in a ring since like March, I believe. He runs across the ring to make a tag, and he injures his knee. I think he pulls his quad like Triple H did. He's injured again and out for another 9 months, which effectively like closed the lid on the NWO. Yeah. So before we kind of shut the door on the NWO and WWE, I want to know if you could have booked the NWO in WWE, maybe just like a month or so. Mm-hmm. If you could tell us an NWO story, what would that be?
I mean, I definitely have Hall and Nash probably win the tag titles. And, in a similar vein to what DX's own New Age Outlaws were doing, like that, what they did was very similar to what the NWO did as WCW tag champions with more in-ring work. So I would have definitely went with that. Yeah, and I mean, I just would have had them beat the shit out of more people. You know what I'm saying? Like the hard thing was they immediately went after Rock and Austin. You know what I mean? Like there's really nowhere to go from there. Like we did get some really cool 6-mans like out of that. But there's really nowhere to go from there. But I probably would have put the tag titles on them and let them do that for a while. But they were so high up the card, not just in WWE, but like you can't have them work with anybody lower. It just doesn't make sense, Again, WWE 2002, 2003, 2004, that embarrassment of riches, man. They got everybody that they could have. Like you don't want to see the NWO and I don't know, like what's my man's name? Rene Dupree. Like no disrespect, but it's just like it's not going to work. You know what I mean? But yeah, tag titles for a while I think would have been good, like for them for sure.
Yeah, well, anything would have been better than what actually happened. It was maybe other than the WCW ECW invasion, it was one of the kind of the worst things that could have happened in 2002. But before Nash got injured, I assume the storyline was going to involve Triple H because they came out one week. Shawn Michaels said that the NWO was missing something. Now that, like you said, they kicked Booker T out, they had a membership open, and they offered it to Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash's old friend, Triple H. At the King of the Ring pay-per-view that year, they told Triple H, you know what? You're either with us or you're against us. And they made that offer to a babyface Triple H. But then Nash got injured, plans went out the door, and suddenly we just kind of pretended that the previous couple months of Shawn Michaels as a bad guy was no longer copacetic. It was no longer the story. It was no longer canon because at the Vengeance pay-per-view, the storyline switched from the NWO recruiting Triple H to Eric Bischoff, who was the general manager of Raw, and Stephanie McMahon, who was the general manager of SmackDown. They were now recruiting Triple H. They wanted him on their show, and they would do anything for it. So at Vengeance, Eric Bischoff and Stephanie called Triple H to the ring. They said, "Hey, man, you got a lot of different potential here with Raw or SmackDown." Stephanie said, "Hey, I know that we kind of did that whole marriage and divorce thing, and that didn't work out, but you know me, and you got a shot here." Triple H told Eric Bischoff, "You know what? I don't like you. It's better to be with the devil I know than the devil I don't." He was about to sign with Stephanie McMahon's SmackDown, but then that familiar strain, that Heartbreak Kid music hit. Shawn Michaels came out, and we just forgot that he was in the NWO, right? He came out wearing just a generic T-shirt, blue jeans. He came out and said, "Hey, Triple H, if you come to Raw, it'll be like the old days. We will have fun. We'll have friendship. We'll make life miserable for Eric Bischoff. What do you think, my man?" And that was all Triple H needed. He signed with Eric Bischoff, and for a little while at least, it looked like we were going to get Triple H and Shawn Michaels running Raw for the first time in 4 years. It was awesome. So the next night on Raw, Triple H comes out, and he introduces his best friend, Shawn Michaels. The two embrace in the ring. Everything's great. Everybody's happy. We've got the two of the biggest superstars in the world back together again. It was exciting, but then Eric Bischoff, that son of a bitch, said that Shawn Michaels was going to serve as Triple H's manager.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we didn't know that Shawn Michaels could wrestle yet. We were still not even entertaining the idea that Shawn Michaels could be a wrestler. So some of us thought that would be fine. Like, yeah, what else is he going to do? Of course he's going to manage Triple H. Shawn Michaels wasn't having it, though. He was pissed. He did not want to be the guy picking up Triple H's bags, opening car doors for him. He was mad, and he let Triple H and Eric Bischoff know that, no, sorry, that's not what the Heartbreak Kid does. I'm the showstopper. I'm the main event. I'm the icon. I am not somebody's manager. And he took off. He left Triple H in the ring, kind of calling after him, which led to a backstage exchange where Triple H was like, "What's going on, man? Like, why can't you do this for me? Everything we've been through, you can't wrestle. Like, why is this such a big deal?" Shawn Michaels reiterated. He's like, "Man, I love you. This isn't about you. I can't be somebody's manager. I can't just be your lackey." So Triple H said, "You know what? I have an idea." He threw a bag at Shawn Michaels, which Shawn Michaels looked into and opened, immediately started laughing. He said, "Are you serious?" Triple H was like, "Yeah, put that on. I'll see you out there." Commercial break happens. The next segment, for the first time in a few years, we hear the DX theme song. Triple H and Shawn Michaels come out. They're wearing the DX t-shirts. They're doing the entrance. They're doing the suck it. It was the coolest thing that we had seen in years. And before we get to what happened, Cam, do you remember seeing this? And what was your reaction?
I do, man. I do. This is like spring, summer 2002, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like heading into senior year of high school, man. So I'm at the crib. I'm watching this. Oh yeah, it was nostalgic as hell. It was great. Like I wanted to get back together. Because again, like even though we've talked about this, I think the DX 2.0 was their best iteration. Ain't nothing like the original.
Sure.
Ain't nothing like that. And this is before we know Shawn Michaels is like different. You know what I mean? Like that his life is different. There are certain things he's going to do and not do. I was hyped for it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was hyped for it too, especially because just a few weeks earlier, you saw Shawn Michaels in an NWO t-shirt. Now you see him in a DX t-shirt. It was cool. So they do the familiar intro. We do it every week on this podcast. Triple H takes the mic. He says, "Are you ready?" "No, I said, are you ready?" And then He said, then, for the thousands in attendance, for the millions watching at home, let's get ready to suck it. And then he kicked Shawn Michaels in the stomach and gave him a pedigree and ruined my life, Cam.
Put that man in the dirt. Took you here to there right away. Yeah.
Oh, he broke our hearts. He immediately, for the first time since he returned from injury, Triple H was a bad guy again, and he destroyed our hopes and dreams of seeing DX run rampant and make life miserable for Eric Bischoff. How cool would that have been to see Triple H and Shawn Michaels annoying Eric Bischoff every week?
For sure.
Right in the heart. But Triple H destroyed it. The next week he came out and he said, Shawn, it was my idea for you to be my manager, and you scoffed at it. Triple H was pissed. He said, for years, I was in your shadow. I picked up your bags. I followed you. I put you to bed. I was your lackey. And now, when I'm the guy, you can't do that for me? How selfish are you? Dave Meltzer wrote in that week's edition of the Observer, he said, actually, we're going to skip all that. Dave Meltzer, he's a legend. He writes a lot of words.
He writes a lot of words. Indeed.
Oh, but that's okay. So the next week, Triple H comes out and he explains, you know what? I did it. I didn't want to just be a tag team again. You can't wrestle. What else are you going to do? Why couldn't you be there for me? Shawn Michaels said, you know what? You're a dead man, Hunter. So the next week, Shawn Michaels was looking through Triple H throughout the arena. Triple H eventually comes out to the ring. He says, all right, Shawn, I'm here. What do you want to do? But before he could call Shawn Michaels out, a stagehand walked up to him, whispered in his ear. Triple H said, what do you mean? What's going on? He rushed to the back. We didn't know what was going on. We were confused. We didn't know if this was real, if this was a story. Something happened, but we cut to the back and we see Shawn Michaels literally in a pool of his own blood. His head was smashed through a car window. They did a really good job, setting that scene. I don't know if you rewatched it in preparation of this. It looked really good. Shawn Michaels' makeup was good. The hole in the window was great. It looked like Shawn Michaels got messed up. And Triple H, for his part, was furious. He was scared. He said, what happened? What the hell happened? He told people to get help. He legitimately seemed concerned for his friend, which kind of added a new layer to the story. Because, Triple H just turned his back on Shawn Michaels, but like he would say later, he pedigreed Shawn for his own good. This was a little bit more serious. So when you saw that Shawn was attacked, where do you think they were going with the story?
I mean, I was like, no, Triple H did that shit. Triple H did that shit. Anything it was like random person. Again, we just get Triple H back. Triple H invented the return from injury twist.
Yeah.
The return from injury babyface turn is Triple H's. You know what I mean?
Right.
But Triple H is a nasty son of a bitch. And so I was like, no, he definitely did that shit. And again, this is pre-evolution, but still my time Triple H, to where he would absolutely do some shit like this. Definitely thought it was Triple H. Never wavered on that at all.
You know what? I let my belief be suspended a little bit. I thought I went along for the story. And there were a few weeks where Triple H maintained his innocence. He went around the arena. He blamed Booker T. Because like you said, if anybody had a reason to smash Shawn Michaels' head in the window, it was Booker T. He blamed the Big Show. He blamed Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho re-blamed Triple H and said, weren't you the one that just pedigreed him? And Triple H said, yeah, but I did that for his own good. Something else. This wasn't personal. This was business. But smashing his head through the window, that's personal. And I'm not going to leave this arena until I find out who did it. That brought out Eric Bischoff, who told Triple H, guess what, man? We've set up a satellite camera. We've got Shawn Michaels live via satellite. We're going to let you guys talk. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm going to play a little bit of audio from that. And actually, never mind. No, I'm not. The point is, Shawn Michaels said, you know what? We've got the video footage. Let's see what happened. And you were right, Cam. It did reveal itself to be
Son of a
Triple H.
bitch.
I was shocked.
I love that.
I was shocked. I was like, but Triple H said he didn't do it. I still was holding on to hope that maybe DX could reunite. Maybe they just had a little bit of miscommunication. But no, it was Triple H. And that set into motion Shawn Michaels returning to the ring for the first time in 4 years. When Shawn Michaels said, I'm coming back and I'm coming for you at SummerSlam, what was your reaction, Cam?
I was hyped.
Yeah.
I was hyped, man. And this, again, like you said earlier, this also exists like in the same ecosystem as Brock and Rock, which was the best sports build I've ever seen for a wrestling match, right? So like the show's already, like the main event already has me like locked in. But now you got Shawn Michaels, Triple H. I think that, you know, best friends have amazing chemistry. Like we're going to get Jimmy and Jay here sooner than later. I think that's going to be really, really fun. We've seen limited stuff with the New Day, even though they don't get like punches against each other. Like when they just kind of get in there, it's really, really fun. Yeah, we've really seen, you know, Kenny Omega and one of his 92 best friends. We've seen them go in there and do their thing. So there's something special about people who are that close because there's a trust they have with one another, to where they can go to an extra, like the whole bloodline thing. Like again, there's a trust you have with people you consider family that allows you to do more. I was hyped, man. I was very, very hyped. And again, the most intriguing part is we're not thinking about WrestleMania 28 Shawn Michaels, right? We're thinking about, does the guy who was really, really good before still have it? We're not talking about an all-time great. And so it was great to see him come back and be maybe better than he ever was, you know, because you couldn't have had him come back against anybody other than Triple H. Because that's the person, whether you think Shawn Michaels is a different person at that point or not, that's exactly who he's not going to take advantage of. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, I was excited for it. Yes, absolutely.
Did you think that, like, so they very specifically set expectations pretty low. And for all we knew as the audience, like, Shawn Michaels still had a bad back. Like, he was still injured. And they very purposefully said, this isn't going to be a wrestling match. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be an unsanctioned fight. He wore jeans to the ring to really.
He had no gear.
Yeah,
like,
let's talk about that.
Jeans, some Jordan-ass jeans.
And a wife beater or a tank top. He had a Bible verse on it, which actually this is I was in, how old was I in 2002? I was like 14 years old.
You put the same thing on?
Philippians 4:13. I took one of my tank tops and in Sharpie wrote Philippians 4:13, wore it to school, got beat up that day.
Is Philippians 4:13, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son?
No, that's John 3:16.
Yeah. What's Philippians 4:13? Start it off.
I can do all things
through Christ who strengthens me. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a cool verse for the longest time. That was my Bible verse.
Somebody has that tattooed. Doesn't Ricochet have that tattooed?
Probably, yeah.
I think that's Ricochet's tattoo right here. Yeah.
It's a good Bible verse. It's a good kind of metaphor for this return. You talked about trust between Shawn Michaels and Triple H. I was watching a documentary in preparation of this episode, and I heard something that really kind of endeared Triple H to me. I want to play the audio from that real quick. We'll see if it gets us taken off of YouTube, but I do want to play it. Just holding back tears right now.
I told you about playing those files off of LimeWire, see? Man, it reminds me, I hope we get there one day. This didn't do it, but those two produced my favorite false finish ever.
I know what you're talking about immediately. From the
Monday Night Raw, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. I think it was for the title too. And Shawn hits him with the super kick, but he falls over, so his shoulders are on the mat too. Everybody thinks Shawn wins the title, and Eric Bischoff's like, no, no, no. I also loved when Regal was the GM, and they cut the finish of the match. And then like they went off the air. It's like, yo, who can I call in the arena? What happened? Like they did some fun stuff with those two. They really did. Maybe better rivals than friends, and they were the best of friends, and they were amazing together. Absolutely.
It was that match, and that interview with Triple H shows you like how seriously he took this. Like this wasn't just a match for him. This was something that he had to protect his best friend. But it turns out Shawn Michaels did not need protection. Shawn Michaels was just as good, if not better than before. He was jumping off ladders. He was going through tables. This match was one of my favorite matches of all time. They went like 27 minutes and put on a hell of a match. I'm going to read what Meltzer had to say about it because it was unbelievable. Jim Ross was pushing that it was Michaels' first match since WrestleMania 19. Actually, he did one match in 2000. Blah, 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 blah. Well, actually, Meltzer. He wore jeans and they did a street fight match using weapons. Michaels did a plancha right away before selling his back for much of the match. Michaels' selling was the best on the show, but that's actually the part of the match that didn't seem to get over with the crowd. They pushed the back injury hard. Triple H spent the match working over the back, doing old school style backbreakers, including one on a chair. Michaels juiced early, and the blood actually had dried up by late in the match. Triple H pulled off Michaels' belt and whipped him with it. He even used a sledgehammer, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Michaels used a Spanish announce Hugo Savinovic's shoe to hit Triple H, much like when he used Mad Dog Vachon's leg on Diesel from Good Friends, Better Enemies. Outside the ring, Michaels took a bump to the table. The finish saw a blocked super kick, a blocked pedigree, and then Michaels scoring the pin with a cradle. Triple H destroyed him afterwards with two sledgehammer shots to the back. Michaels went out on a stretcher. A hell of an emotional ride. 4 1/4 stars. Cam, when you saw this match, what were you thinking?
Hey, he's back, man. He's back. Yeah, it was Shawn Michaels is back. Again, Intercontinental title Shawn Michaels, WWF champion Shawn Michaels going into WrestleMania 14. So like the months before that, it's him at the peak of his powers as far as we know him, man. To take that much time off, but to still be so good. And to, not be long in the tooth at that point. Because this is after Bret Hart's been done for 2 years almost. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I was excited. I was excited to see what he would do going forward. Of course, we got Elimination Chamber down the road, and we got The Undertaker. Like, there's so many good things that we got after this, but I was like, no, he's back. He's back. And in my mind, not knowing a lot of stuff, I'm like, man, can't wait till we get Shawn Michaels and The Rock. You know what I'm saying? Can't wait till Shawn Michaels and Austin run it back. You know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. it was a bunch of new possibilities. That was the biggest thing for me. Triple H, who I wrote about it a little bit with MJF in that the same way that CM Punk solidified Max through like physicality, that was pioneered by Mick Foley doing that for Triple H. You know what I mean? And so Triple H is at like also the height of his powers. So to see those two be in the position they are and to get so physical, I loved it, man. Shawn Michaels was back. Shawn Michaels was better than ever. I'd come to find out in the next couple of months for sure.
Absolutely. This was one of my favorite matches. It's still one of my favorite matches. It was the first in many with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Eventually, they would have more singles matches. They would have a Hell in a Cell match. They'd have a 3 stages of Hell match involving a ladder match. Was kind of a dream. You alluded to it earlier. A few months down the road at Survivor Series 2002, Shawn Michaels, who we thought was never going to wrestle again, won the World Heavyweight Championship in an Elimination Chamber match. He was a champion again, which was kind of the cherry on top of his story. So I got to ask, we've seen a lot of really inspirational stories. We've seen Bryan Danielson come back. We've seen Edge come back. We've seen Paige/Saraya come back. Where does Shawn Michaels' comeback story rank in terms of all-time comeback stories?
It's really, really high, and it's because of what we talked about earlier in that it wasn't just a comeback from injury.
Right.
You know, like this was about the person being better and being more willing to work with people. You know, like I have it, like, again, you know, Edge was a beautiful thing because we thought you could never do this again because you were hurt. It wasn't about necessarily how he treated people, you know. Really, really high, man. I don't know who else came back from injury as a better talent.
Right.
Like Ric Flair, I guess, you know, you break your back in a plane crash, you come back from injury better than ever. But, Steve Austin got smarter and more popular, but what he could do in the ring absolutely changed after breaking his neck and his knees went bad, right? But Shawn Michaels was a better all-around performer after hiatus. And so from a strictly like aesthetic standpoint and from an output standpoint, I think it's the best comeback ever. I really think it is. The second half of his career, like if Kurt Warner didn't make it to another Super Bowl with the Arizona Cardinals, we would not talk about him the way that we talk about him. He had to prove he could do that again, and he did, and he's appreciated for that. You know what I mean? I think Shawn Michaels is the best comeback ever because it was more than just about what was in the ring, but the in-ring also produced maybe the best American talent ever. So, yeah.
Yep, I completely agree. Shawn Michaels, I've spoken about it before. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. And if he never came back in 2002, he might still have been my favorite. But what he did in 2002 until I think 2010, when he finally retired for good, minus a tag team match that we're never going to talk about. Actually, we might, because that would be an interesting podcast episode.
I have not watched them. You know, I have my set of rules with Saudi pay-per-views. But I'm good. Wait, was it Saudi or Australia that he wrestled?
It was Saudi. Yeah.
It was Saudi. Yeah. And again, I don't knock nobody else. Do what you do, but I ain't seen it. I seen a screenshot with that bald ass head. Nick, did I tell you where, like, I don't know if you saw my seats at the Great American Bash, but like, you know.
Yeah.
The WWE calm is good to me. Sure. But we were sitting literally right behind Shawn Michaels' family. And God bless Caden. I love my little homie Caden from Fightful. I don't know if it was Shawn's sister or sister-in-law or cousin-in-law or whatever, but she absolutely put her beer on her chair, then sat down and knocked her whole beer on Caden's shoes. And it was just, I was like, hey, we can't do that. That's Shawn Michaels' family, baby. You got to eat that.
Right.
You got to eat it.
Shit and like the taste of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. That's So Shawn Michaels, he is a legend, and like you said, more than even what he did in the wrestling ring, I think what he did behind the scenes, what he's doing now, making amends with people, leading the next generation of superstars, becoming a producer with NXT.
Mm-hmm.
It is the best comeback story that professional wrestling has ever seen. It was an honor to watch. It was an honor to talk about with you. Before we go, you were writing about it on Twitter a little bit. Today is the 30th anniversary of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I gotta know, who was your favorite Power Ranger and why was it Tommy Oliver?
Seriously, right? I tell you what, man, the coolest thing. Shout out to my man Danny. Danny is tight with my man Josh Mustachio, who I know through the torch. Me and Josh are tight to this day. So Danny has a homeboy who is like the MC for Comic-Cons, right? So Comic-Con was here in Austin, and Tommy Oliver, Jason David Frank, and of course this years ago, was one of the panelists. And so like he let me like record the panel and like shouted me out during like Tommy's panel. It was the coolest thing, man. So shout out to those. My man Vic Dandridge, that's my guy. Growing up in Southern Maryland, I was literally like 7 years old. Power Rangers came out. So it's like 30 years ago today. School had just started. So if I'm 7, that means I'm starting 2nd grade this week. Because I started kindergarten at 5. I'm starting 2nd grade this week. Listen, man, I was at Middleton Valley Elementary School. And boy, we used to be on that playground. And like, growing up in Southern Maryland, my class is 29 black kids, 1 Puerto Rican kid, and 2 white kids. We were all the Black Ranger at recess. Everybody was Zach. That's what we were, right? But no, man, I have, I had the toys, I had the action figures, I had the Zords. I have comics right now to this day. I was the Black Ranger a couple of years ago for Halloween. But no, man, Tommy's the one, man. I still watch Forever Red every few months. Tommy Oliver is my guy. One of the most important shows to ever exist, if for no other reason. Like, it was a lot of our introduction to Japanese entertainment.
Sure.
It informed us that, wow, Americans are lazy. They just chop up other people's footage and slap some kids on it. How dare you, Westerners? The whitewashing of quality programming, right? When everybody who listens to this show has seen this, so I'm not telling you nothing you don't know, but man, what is it called? Superpower Beatdown or Superhero Beatdown?
Yeah.
The Bat in the Sky YouTube channel. When they had the Green Ranger versus Scorpion, have you seen this?
I have. I've seen
Green Ranger versus Scorpion. Then he takes off his helmet and it's Tommy. I'm so excited. Yes. Yeah, man. I am an MMPR kid. I hung on all the way through Zeo. Yep. And then when I got to Zeo, I was like, Cam, you're a little too old for all this. Now, I do not feel that way anymore because I've gone back. I've watched like SPD. But yeah, man, Power Rangers, such a valuable tool and resource and piece of entertainment for us late 30-somethings. It meant everything to us. See the White Ranger helmet back there. Love that. I got my Black Ranger mask somewhere in here. But yeah, man, shout out to the Power Rangers. I'm still waiting, video game developers, on my goddamn Power Rangers character action game. Yeah. I should be able to have a Power Rangers beat 'em up in 2023. Make that happen, please.
Did you play Battle for the Grid? Was that fun?
Yes, I like it. And I like fighting games. Fighting games are cool, but like they wear on me because like I'm not like, I don't want to play with strangers online this fighting game. Yeah. So once I got through the story, I was like, this is dope, but what else am I going to do, right? Give me the action game. Give me Power Rangers Devil May Cry. Give me Power Rangers Ninja Gaiden. Give me Power Rangers Streets of Rage. Do it.
Well, I hope they do, Cam. Like you said, man, we grew up with it. We were right at that perfect age. There are 3 things in my childhood that I have kept with me for the last 30 years. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Batman, in professional wrestling. And being able to still have those passions, being a grown-ass man now and having the money to buy the action figures and the helmets and the Megazords, it's great. I don't feel like a 35-year-old man a lot of the time when I'm wearing my Tommy Oliver White Ranger helmet. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Break It Down, a D-Generation X retrospective. Cam, you got a lot of stuff to plug, man. You got a lot of stuff you're doing. Is there anything you want to shout out specifically?
Man, it's funny. I'm literally like mid-conversation about getting management. And it's not because like I think I'm some famous person. It's because I'm the most unorganized, scatterbrained person to ever exist. I would not mind paying somebody 10 to 15% of what I make per project to keep these things organized. I would love that. So
am I gonna have that?
But people? Most recently, with the Ringer, I know you guys missed me. It's been a few months. Wrote about MJF, man. Me and Max had a very good conversation about his hopes and dreams and his goals, man, about being the greatest AEW champion of all time. That was really, really fun to talk to him. It was really fun, and I'll tell you this, Nick. So, Rick, matter of fact, 3 days from now will be exactly 1 year since I wrote my first article with the Ringer. And of course, I reached out to my man Ricky Starks for my first article. That's still one of my favorite conversations. Oh my God, Rick, they hired me. I have to talk to you right now. The first thing Rick did was put me on with my man Danny, who is the AEW media guy. Right. So I wrote the thing with Max, and of course, Max being Max, he ignored like the mandate of get on the phone with media. And he hit me randomly on a Saturday morning, yo, let's talk. And so we did, and I had to hit Danny like, yo, just so you know, me and Max talk. I sent him the audio. It was great. It was all good. So on Friday, the article comes out that morning. I'm in the gym, and I just shoot Danny a link to the article. Danny calls me immediately, and he was like, yo, Cam, I love it. Max loved it. He thinks you captured exactly what he was going for. I can't believe that we still have you. Pretty soon you're going to be writing for Vanity Fair or whoever. And I was like, Danny, just chill out, dog. Like, we're good. We're good. Like, thank you. But no, I love that they are very encouraging and very appreciative. And so I love working with that team. I love working with WWE, AEW. They're both just really great to me. So yeah, theringer.com. I got some stuff up with Fightful for the last couple of months. Brand new show with Fightful. My point is with my man Rob Wilkins. We did our first show on Sunday, so that's probably going to be like a Sunday morning show. We're still working out the kinks on whether it's going to be weekly or monthly. Go to foryourwear.com. Seahawk merch has dropped if you want some of that. And then like we're starting the thing. I don't know how regular it's going to be, but after Monday Night Raw, I was a part of the Pro Wrestling Torch for a very long time. Wade Keller would do a call-in show where people could ask about the show. Me and my man Ilfam from Black Wrestling, we are working on a thing where you call in, you speak your piece, you talk your shit about the show, and we just let you go. So that's a work. It's a work in progress. I believe we're calling it. What are we calling it? The Cam and Fam call-in show. So yeah, that should be fun. But Nick knows we talk about it all the time, man. I work as hard as I work out of a fear of not doing enough work. I want to leave a mark on this. I think the best way to do that is to put your name in as many places as possible that you can do quality work, just like we do here on Break It Down. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. I know how precious it is. Audience, thank you guys for tuning in once again to Break It Down, a D-Generation X retrospective. This has been fun. It's been fun talking about my favorite wrestler with my favorite writer, guys. We will check you next time. In the meantime, we've got 2 words for you.
Read Philippians.